The multiverse is real, just not in the way you think it is by Sean Carroll. I'ma drop a like, you feel me? Like my video and
There's no
stuff like
question the
that.
multiverse is
Support your
having a
boy.
kind of moment in popular culture. Marvel movies have been leaning into it. Doctor
Loki's a fire show. Doctor Strange is a fire movie.
Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, various Spider-Man movies, but also Rick and Morty and Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That was this movie. That movie's fucking lit. This movie right here, yeah, nigga, thumbs up, nigga.
You might think it's the fault of physics because physicists have been talking about a multiverse for a few decades now, both in cosmology and in quantum mechanics. But in fact, as often happens in Hollywood and elsewhere, you ignore what the scientists say and you do your own kind of thing. The kind of multiverse that is being used in Hollywood is more like the philosophical idea of the set of all possible worlds. It's clear why this would be so interesting to people because we've all made decisions. We've all wondered what life would be like if they were a little bit different. If an election had gone a different way, if our team had gone a different way, if we had not gotten hurt, if we had asked that person out for a date. And this sort of makes us think, well, maybe we're in the wrong universe. We're in the wrong timeline.
Nah, nigga shouldn't think that. Nah, at that point just coping. This is the wrong timeline. Cause nigga, I definitely should have fucking did that. Like, no, fuck out of here.
There's another world out there. That's the one I want to be in. Now, science comes along, physics, my own field, and says, it's possible. There literally are other universes out there, places where things are different. But there's different ways in which science can lead us to the idea of a multiverse. I'm Sean Carroll. I'm a theoretical physicist and philosopher at Johns Hopkins University, and I'm the author of The Biggest Ideas in the Universe: Space, Time, and Motion.
All right. I already have opinions and understandings about the multiverse, but I'm gonna try to save those until like later on in the video. You feel me? I don't want to talk too much for right now.
I think it's really important when we're thinking about physicists' versions of the multiverse to realize physicists never start out by saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there were a multiverse? It is always the place they're dragged to kicking and screaming because they're trying to explain what we do observe. A big criticism of multiverse ideas is that you can't observe the multiverse. You can't falsify it, you can't test it.
Well, you technically can observe it through your own mind. You feel me? When you think about the different possibilities, you're literally experiencing the multiverse. You're experiencing different possible timelines through your thoughts about them.
Etc. But what you can do is observe what happens in ours. And what you want to do as a scientist.
But I guess I know what they mean. You can't I get what they're trying to say, but no, because you technically can. It says you can't prove it in the way that you want to through physical means. You can only do it through like mental means and the means of your consciousness and stuff like that. So I get what they're trying to say. You feel me? But still, you could technically prove it if you realize that we experience it through our mind and through our consciousness and all that shit. You feel me?
Is come up with a theory, which is a kind of a story, a theory that accounts for what we see, for the data that we can have access to. And some theories, some very, very simple, very easy to write down theories, like the inflationary theory of cosmology or the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics, they both explain what we see in our universe and unambiguously predict the existence of other universes. In cosmology, which is maybe the most famous one up until recently, there's literally just parts of our universe that are so far away where conditions can be radically different. They can either be kind of like us, but with different details, or even different laws of physics, different particles and forces and the whole shebang. There's an entirely different conception called the many worlds of quantum mechanics, which is both in some sense more realistic and easy to bring into reality, but also more mind-blowing. It just says, whenever you have a quantum mechanical system, which, spoiler alert, all systems are quantum mechanical at heart, but whenever you measure it in a particular way, you can get different possible measurement outcomes. This is something we've understood for 100 years now. The question is, what happens to the alternative measurement outcomes that you didn't observe? So if you have a particle, an elementary particle like an electron, and you're going to observe its location or its spin or something like that, the equations will tell you that certain outcomes are possible, certain outcomes are not. An electron is never going to turn into a proton. They have different electrical charges. That will literally never happen. But the electron could be spinning either clockwise or counterclockwise. And the many worlds version of quantum mechanics says both of those will generically come true in different universes. So this is literally
Or as I would like to say, in different timelines. You feel me?
a parallel universe.
Because really thinking about it, right? Because here's where I got to step in a little bit. When it comes to quantum mechanics, right? They account for these possibilities like with math and stuff like that, right? Like when they're doing the math equation, they're like, okay, nigga, we're trying to calculate the we're trying to calculate how this electron moves and where it's going to be at, right? We do this certain equation and we give certain possibilities of where it's going to be at. But at some point, right? At some point, you experience where the electron ends up being at, right? There was all these different possibilities, but they eventually condensed into one thing that actually happened. You see, the thing that actually happened is the thing that takes place within inside the universe, right? And the other possibilities were the different possible timelines, which we did all account for. We accounted for it with the math and stuff like that. We did all this shit. We thought about all the different timelines and shit like that, but eventually one of them truly manifests. But my whole entire point is the fact that the place where things manifest that, the place where the possibilities manifest that, that's the universe. You feel me? And the multiverse is the different possible timelines, which all eventually condensed into one timeline where one thing happens. You feel me? But you can still think about the other timelines, and you can still calculate the other timelines and try to account for them and make variables and shit. You feel me? So yeah.
Universe. This isn't some place very, very far away. This is a simultaneously existing reality where the outcome of a quantum mechanical experiment turned out differently to ours. And if big noticeable things in the world depend on the outcome of that experiment, you could wind up in a very different looking universe. Human beings love to put themselves at the center of every story. So when you start talking about the multiverse and different ways things could have gone, they instantly start thinking, oh, if I had made a different decision, things would have turned out differently. And that's fine if you're just being philosophical and thinking about the space of all possible ways the world could have gone. But if you're thinking like a physicist, you solve the equations. It has literally nothing to do with human beings making decisions. If you think about the cosmological multiverse, the other universes are literally billions of light years away. They have nothing to do with you and your choices throughout the day. The quantum
Well, is that fully true? No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think I would say that. Because let's run this back, right?
beings making decisions. If you think about the cosmological multiverse, the other universes are literally
Cosmology is based off the cosmos, and human beings are beings within inside of the cosmos. So, with that being said, there could be other possibilities where there are no humans at all, right? But I think it kind of only makes sense that one would assume that if we are a part of the cosmos and there's different versions of the cosmos, there's probably different versions of them inside the cosmos too. I could see why people think about that. See, a lot of people, because I've heard this before, people act like this doesn't have anything to do with you, right? Like the scientific perspective. And it's like, I kind of get why they say that, but at the same exact time, I don't think it's too crazy to. I don't think it's too crazy to think about why humans say what they say. You feel me? In regards to thinking about it has to do with them and different decisions. Because, well, I guess how can I put this? Because even with different versions of humans, I could see how that's not even always a decision too. So I guess I could kind of see that even with humans being another thing in a different universe or in a different timeline. Like let's say in a different reality, right? My name is freaking Derek. You feel me? And on YouTube, instead of being Genie Dot, I'm freaking sheep sheep dude 813. You feel me? Like some of that could just be a matter of circumstance and not a matter of decision, because the decisions that I make are partially based upon the way that I'm programmed. You feel me? So if in a different timeline I'm kind of naturally programmed differently, I would naturally have different decisions anyway. So if I make decisions based upon programming and stuff like that, then it's like it don't really matter what decision I make, because I was kind of already bound, or I was kind of already fated to make that decision based upon my programming. At this point, I'm just rambling, but I'm trying to see, like, because I see both sides of why some people would think that these different timelines have to do with their decisions, and also why they have nothing to do with decisions at all. You feel me? So, yeah.
Literally billions of light years away. They have nothing to do with you and your choices throughout the day.
Yeah, like I get that, but like I get like why one would say that it has nothing to do with your shit, but also why someone says that it doesn't do with your shit. You feel me? I
The
understand both.
quantum mechanics multiverse is a little bit of a different story because it does happen sort of everywhere. There's things going on that create two parallel realities. But the things that are going on are not human beings making decisions. They're subatomic particles being measured in some quantum mechanical way.
Right.
If anything, it's the quantum measurements that force you to make a decision.
And that's what I was kind of talking about right there. You feel me? Like you're being programmed to make a decision. You feel me? Your decisions aren't affecting the quantum shit. The quantum shit's already affecting your decisions. Therefore, whatever you do, you are already going to do based upon the programming of that reality. And that's what I was kind of talking about towards the end of my shit.
Not your decisions forcing different universes to come into existence. After
Right.
all, you are a body made of a whole bunch of quantum mechanical particles, electrons and protons and neutrons. If you choose to describe yourself that way, there are different versions of you branching the universe. So then you have to ask, well, if I could have seen the electron spinning clockwise or counterclockwise and I saw it spinning counterclockwise, what is my relationship to the person who saw it spinning clockwise? Are they me, just in a different universe, or are they a separate person? I think the clear answer here is there's a relationship, but they're a different person. It's very much like identical twins.
Right.
You have one fertilized egg. There's at one point in time a single cell that is one entity there in the universe, but it splits into two different people. I think that's how we should think about.
But here's the thing too, though, right? Because now here's where it could get a little bit deep, right? So, uh, if you are under the assumption that our brain is what truly makes thoughts, right? Because people, you can think about it in two ways. Either our brain makes thoughts, or our brain is a receiver to information that manifests as thoughts, right? But if you think that your brain makes thoughts, right? That's where it can make sense. Where like whatever decision you make, you were already gonna make, because you feel me. Your brain just made that thought because your brain's made of these particles, and the particles made you think that thought, right? You made the decision. But if you think that your brain's a receiver of thoughts, that means that thoughts exist separate from your brain, and your brain can perceive them and pick up on them, right? Now, here's why I'm saying that. Electrons and protons, right? They're technically a form of information acting itself out. You feel me? Thoughts are also information that's acting itself out. So with that being said, right, one could say that your thoughts do influence the particles if your thoughts are kind of existing on that quantum level. You feel me? Like if your thoughts exist on that quantum level beyond the different particles and stuff like that, then that's where one could assume that the thoughts actually influence what happens on that quantum level, because they're on that same level. You see what I'm trying to say?
Different versions of ourselves in the multiverse. They might share a past, but once they've diverged, once they're in a universe of their own, they are now separate people. It's not weird or impossible to contemplate, it's just a slightly more sophisticated version of our notion of personal identity updated for the multiverse.
But I feel what he's saying right here, though. You feel me? Like if you are a different you, you're a different person at that point. That's pretty much what he's saying right now.
I absolutely believe we can imagine thinking about the multiverse as a useful psychological tool or personal tool, right? Visualization exercises have been part of psychology for a long time. And so when we physically imagine ourselves embodied in a different set of circumstances, we think about that possibility differently. And the multiverse is sort of a nudge in that direction. And maybe you can argue that technology these days is making that more possible. We see other lives in a more vivid way than maybe we used to, with virtual realities, with alternate ways of thinking about ourselves, augmented reality, just wearing a headset in the world that we're in. Apparently, there's a whole genre of Zillow porn, which is not actually
What?
pornography. It's just getting kicks out of looking at houses you can't.
Yeah, because I was like, I get because Zillow's an app. Okay, I feel okay. I was like, wait, what are we talking? Yeah, Zillow's a house app, and people enjoy looking at the house app. Okay, I
Afford
get
on
it.
Zillow and imagining what it would be like to live there. We're
Okay,
sort of peeking into alternate realities that didn't come true.
yeah,
These could be both positive and negative psychological tools if we use them in the right way by imagining the way things could have gone better and then saying, okay, what do I need to do to increase the chances that next time it actually will go better?
yeah,
But it's psychologically not healthy to push that too far because there are some decisions we can't undo. This is why we talked about the serenity prayer, right? The ability to recognize what we can change, what we can't, and accept the things that we can't, as well as to be able to tell the difference.
word. I
You can
like that.
imagine in a multiverse having made all sorts of different decisions, but in fact, there's no such thing as time travel in the real world. You cannot actually go back and remake the decisions differently. It's fine to imagine all sorts of possibilities, but at the end of the day, we have to live and affect the universe that we're in.
Hmm.
I like to think, maybe I'm being a physicist here more than a human being, but I like to think that by contemplating all of these different possibilities, past, present, and future, we can put things in perspective. We can think about how, yeah, there was that moment when things went terribly wrong. Either maybe I did something wrong or there was an unforeseen event that I couldn't have controlled. But you know what? The causal influence I have on the world only extends toward the future. The choices I can make right now will have an impact that I will feel down the road, but I cannot make a choice right now that undoes what happened in the past. I think this is a truth about physics and cosmology and the world, and psychologically, it's a very important principle to keep in mind.
Essentially, don't get lost fantasizing about what could have been. Just do your best to create what you want right now. Essentially, is what he's saying. All right, okay, I like the video. You feel me? Yeah, it was a pretty decent video. It was a pretty good video. You feel me? Um, yeah, I love you all. Let me catch you in my next video. Peace. The freak out.